Hey there, Mayette. Thanks so much for making some time for this today.
Absolutely. I'm very excited.
Oh, that's always great to hear. I've been having so much fun having these conversations. I have learned a ton, so I really appreciate getting to hear some of your insights today. And so, just a chance to again thank you and see if you have any questions before we get started.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, I want to know how you started this whole modern career podcast. I don't know if you want to put this part in or not, but it's
Sure.
definitely one of my curiosities as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's a cool way to start this episode then, Mayette, is we started this podcast because we've been working in the career services space for almost 5 years now. And
Wow.
I've had the chance to, yeah, thank you. Um, I've had the chance to meet a lot of people from the HR space, from career services teams, but also job seekers. And I kept hearing the same questions over and over again from job seekers about how to stand out in interviews, how to network. And I thought, it would be great to hear the story of some career service professionals because they were job seekers at one point and they've gone through this journey to get where they are and collect the insights they have. So that's kind of why we started reaching out to folks saying, "Hey, do you want to come on and tell us a little bit about your career highlights and give us a sense of where your advice comes from?" And it's been really insightful.
Awesome. Yeah, that's actually such a cool space to give, your insights, your ideas, and even getting to know, like you mentioned, different individuals and how we got here. That's great to hear.
Well, that's always how I like to start the episodes off here is to just ask, I think a lot of job seekers feel like they're going to graduate from school or a program and step right into the job that they have been preparing for, but there are so many stops along the way. And I always like to hear, what some of those stops have been for you. How have you gotten to where you are today? And if you don't mind sharing some of those highlights with us, that would be great to hear. What's your story so far, man?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2019, I graduated from Sheridan College for the business marketing 2-year program.
Nice.
Um, you hear it a lot, certain industries are hard to get in. And then in my mind, I'm like, I'm just ready to get that job, the career. I didn't know about any resources or career help. Um, Funny enough is that, of course, after graduating college, I was applying to some jobs. You know, I don't know if I'm the only one, but you end up getting that job and it's not what it's like in the
Definitely
job
not the
description.
only one. Yeah.
This is not for me. What type of job is this? It says it's supposed to be, I think maybe a marketing generalist, but it was a sales job, going
Uh,
outside trying to sell something. And at that time, I was moving with my parents to, I think, 2 cities over. So that actually opened up my, I guess, location to where I can search for jobs now.
okay.
It was definitely pretty difficult, as I guess I would hear quite often when I talk to my clients or the grads I work with. It's difficult out there, whatever industry it may be. Um,
And where were you
so
moving from? Was it a short distance? Was it a long move?
Yeah, basically, if you know where Oakville is, I grew
Yes.
up there. Yeah, Oakville, then ended up moving into Hamilton, that
Okay.
area. So, yeah, basically, like I mentioned, it was really hard to
Yeah.
find opportunity. And I want to mention, I did not know career services existed. When I
Man.
graduated, I think I was maybe 21, 20. All I knew was I'm going to hand in my resume and that's it,
Yeah.
right? But there's so
100%.
much more to that. Yeah. And funny enough, I'm so grateful. My mother-in-law, she is, I think, the director of VPI Employment Services.
Oh,
She
yes.
told me, yeah, so she ended up telling me, um, the location in Hamilton was hiring for an administrative assistant. I was
Okay.
like, you know what, that's perfect. You know, I was familiar of the company and what she was doing anyways. So I was like, okay, definitely I'll give it a go. I ended up working as an administrative assistant for about, I would say, 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
Um, and you know what? That starting from there, that really made me understand the foundation of what clients and grads or anyone, job seekers, what they're looking for.
Huh.
Um, and then from there, I grew within the company as an employment support specialist. So I did that for about a year or so.
Okay.
Um, and it was great, definitely faced a lot of challenges. Like I mentioned, I didn't know much about career services, Employment Ontario. Um, but you feel so good when you do this role, right? It comes with many ups and downs, but when you're helping someone achieve their goal, that's an amazing feeling.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah, and then from there, I decided that I didn't want to be part of nonprofit. I actually wanted to, get into tech somehow. I didn't know how,
Okay.
but somehow. And this was already, the pandemic, and I ended up finding an opportunity for another, Employment Ontario organization that was funding a woman in tech sales program. So it was a pilot program. I ended up getting the opportunity, and this was just amazing to me. Working with women with from self-identifying women with different backgrounds, um, who are able to get certifications in tech sales. And my role in that was a job placement specialist. So I was working with these students and also going out and networking. That aspect was so different for me, but I loved it. I got to meet really big companies like Intuit, RBC, the DMZ, places like that. And you really see the different environment of how cool it is, relaxed it is, learning new things. And from there, I ended up getting into community partnerships. So that was sort of what I was doing, but now working more for, I would say, creating partnerships with other businesses rather than facing, job seekers. Um, and like I said, you always learn. Even though you have those skills, you keep learning all
Yeah.
those other things outside of it. And then I always heard about the tech ed company Lighthouse Labs, which is where I'm working with now, who I'm working with now. I knew some people from there, and I loved it. And I'm here now. I love what I'm doing, understanding the grads now, and kind of figuring out ways on how I can help them. With these grads, it definitely makes me realize I was in that position. I understand 100% how they feel when they don't feel motivated, or they're having a hard time, or they're having the best time. I experienced all that. Um, all to say is this is what my job is, a career service advisor. I'm always going to praise that, I love what I do because I understand how they feel. And I'm also making these amazing connections, and almost guiding them, but also letting them choose what they want to do. And I'm here as a resource. So it goes back when I graduated in 2019, I did not know this existed. And now being part of what's part of this, wishing I had that type of guidance or help or resource, that would have definitely made a huge difference. But I got to give it back to, my mother-in-law who helped me, grow in this space.
Oh, that's yeah, amazing to hear the kind of backstory so far, Matt. Thank you for sharing those insights. I have a ton of questions already. Um, but the first one I think, and it kind of goes to what you started your story with, and that was that you didn't know about these career services. The first thing I want to ask you, and I think we'll touch on this again at the end, is how can people reach out to learn more about Lighthouse? Are there specific types of grads that the program's for, or can you share any details on how people could connect with you if they, see this and go, well, I do want to talk to man and I do want help. What are the next steps and how can people learn more about what you're doing and get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting in touch with Lighthouse Labs, we're all over social media. We have a LinkedIn, we always have info sessions. Actually, I think that happen every week or bi-weekly, but we have programs in cybersecurity, web development, data science, data analytics. Super cool. I actually work with grads specifically in web development and data science. Um, and I always say, and you might hear it quite often, networking is so important. That doesn't just mean job seeking. This can mean just growing your contacts, right? I always try to say, if you find that someone has graduated, or you know someone, or you see someone on LinkedIn, or maybe your coworker who graduated from Lighthouse Labs, ask them about it. Ask about their experience as well. But for me, I'm going to talk highly about it because I do love what we do. And, working with a team that really supports you on my end is what we try to do best to support our grads and our students.
Okay, fantastic. I do hope people take Mayette up on that offer, reach out. It sounds like an amazing program, and especially if you're interested in web development. And um, I'll make sure to remind everyone at the end of the episode again, um, some ways that they can get involved with the program. But to kind of take another step back to what you initially talked about, Mayette, which was, you went into a career that you were really excited about, and once you tried it, it wasn't what you were expecting. So I don't think you're alone in that. I think that happens to tons of people, and it can be confusing and frustrating. So, do you have any advice for people who are going through that the way you did?
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone it's never too late. If you have the opportunity or if you can, everyone's situation is different. Um, Explore those things, explore different industries, explore different programs, even if it's maybe I would say, like a beginner's program or kind of something that you're an intro program that you're not sure about, explore it. Um, you know, I'm going to share this. My husband, I think he's changed his program 3 or 4 times, from finance up until the trades. He's in the trades now. And we
Oh, wow.
talk about it sometimes that he absolutely loves what he does. He found that he's more hands on rather than, what I do, like sitting in front of a computer and working with numbers, and like I said, everyone is different. Sometimes it just takes a couple tries to figure out what you want. And I just so happened I had the opportunity. Maybe I didn't have to particularly go back into school, but got the opportunity to grow in this industry, and it's amazing.
Okay, that is super helpful. And we may have to have your husband on the podcast at some point too to hear about all these
Oh,
different
yeah, he
careers. That would be
should. Hopefully, we can convince him.
Yeah, let's try to do that as well. I just think it's so encouraging for people to hear that, hey, it's okay to change your mind and change course. And, there are ways to go about doing it to find something that you enjoy doing every day. So thank you for sharing, your advice on how you did that. And I think that will help a lot of people. But kind of to fast forward now to another part of your career, I think people can really learn from was when you kind of got that interest in tech and you said, you kind of found this opportunity to work in the Women in Tech program. How did you find that? Was that from research you did, talking to people? How did you go about, yeah, finding that opportunity?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're cooped up in our house, we're on TikTok, we're on
Yeah,
Instagram.
I hear you.
You see all these videos of people getting into tech. And of course, I'm like, I don't have anything in tech. I don't know anything in tech, right? So looking at how it was at the time during the pandemic and wanting to do maybe a career switch, which I thought was going to be what I wanted to do or my plan. But I did some research. I started maybe looking into not specifically tech jobs, but maybe career advisor jobs. And it so happened the Career Foundation ended up having this Women in Tech program.
Okay.
and they were looking for that job placement specialist. So in my head, I'm like, this is perfect. I am an employment service specialist with VPI, and I worked in this type of industry, and now this is just my way to get into some type of tech, and I ended up loving it a lot. Um, and then definitely, wanted to now finding my new passion is working in partnerships. So that's when I went back to VPI, worked as a community partnership coordinator, and that was great. Getting connected now without facing the clients or grads or students. Now I'm facing these big companies, so that was awesome. And how it led me into Lighthouse Labs, I'm like, you know what? This is the perfect opportunity, a mix of everything, a mix of career advising, networking, able to go to these awesome networking events in tech, growing my network, meeting grads I can connect with and understand. And this is why I feel like where I am right now is perfect. It's because it's from everything from the last 4 years that I did trying to figure out what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go, which led me here.
Okay, that's really cool to hear as well. And so, for other people that might have found, an interest in something new, whether it be tech or the arts, or it could be anything that has caught your eye somewhere along the way, the approach you took was kind of just to do research, kind of in your free time. It sounds like Googling
Absolutely.
things, trying to see, what kind of opportunities are available, and then that's kind of how you came across the career foundation post initially that got you in that.
Exactly.
Okay, right on.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's super helpful to know. So again, for those listening, just doing a little bit of that in your free time, in between maybe scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, you'll come
No.
across something cool. Um,
Exactly.
that's very helpful to know. You had said something else there that I'm gonna have to come back to. It slipped my mind for a second, but um, I think it's interesting. You also mentioned that you were an admin assistant at VPI at one point, and that it kind of gave you a window into the company. I think a lot of people end up in these entry level roles and worry they're not in the position they want to be. But there's so much to learn from those entry level positions. So I think that's really fascinating. You said it gave you an insight into what it's like working with job seekers, and that you took something away from that. I think that's interesting that you managed to find a way to turn that experience into something you can learn from. So I would advise people to do what you did there as well, and take those opportunities to learn. The question just came back to me. So you talked about going to these networking events and
Yeah.
making the most of them, but they are definitely nerve-wracking for some. So do you have any insights or tips on how to just be at a networking event? How did you talk to people? How did you start conversations? Any tips like that, I think, would be super helpful for people to know, because they know they need to be there, but they don't know what to do once they get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to start off with, till this day, I still get nervous, right? Um, and that's for any networking event I go to. And that's normal. That's probably like one thing that will never leave, whether it's me or anyone else who's watching this. Um, but what I like to tell myself and what I like to share with the job seekers is go in it with a plan and be an active listener. You do not want to make it all about yourself, you
Right.
know? And even though I'm employed, I don't want to make it about myself. I like to build rapport before I like to start talking about, my experience or what I can offer, things like that. And I find that works amazingly. So what I mean by active listener is, ask how they are, what brought them here. I want to know more about your company, let me know. And I find that once you create that, that's going to prompt more questions that you can ask and what you can respond to. And then from there, you could talk about I'm a job seeker and your company definitely like aligns with what I'm looking for, or your values are so awesome. Those are my values as well. I'd love to check out your company's website. Can I please get that? Can we connect on LinkedIn? If you have any job postings, I definitely want to check that out. You want to stand out for sure when you're talking to just anyone, right? They want to remember you. So, number one rule, active listener and go in with a plan. Um, and like I said, being nervous is normal. Um,
Definitely.
but that's what I go by. I like to create those relationships with the people I talk to.
That's really helpful, I think, because people, I think, have the expectation that they need to have all these impressive things to say. But
Yes.
I totally agree. Asking questions and learning about the people who are there, I think it takes a lot of stress off you to have to be impressive, and it makes you more a part of the event. So I think that's really practical advice, man. Thanks for reminding us to, yeah, be active listeners at these opportunities. And you end up learning some really interesting things about people, I would say.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. You learn interesting things, and then you can bounce off of that. They will learn interesting things about you and why you're there.
100%. Now, in today's kind of workforce, there's still, the process that let's say you make an interesting connection and you do, connect on LinkedIn and that type of thing, and a job opportunity comes up. Folks may still have to submit a resume, a cover letter, an interview. Do you have any insights on how to stand out in that process? Because I know resumes have changed quite a bit recently with kind of the dawn of, ATS software that's going to, and sorry for those folks who haven't heard of that, it's the applicant tracking software that some companies use to review your resume. Have you noticed anything that helps candidates or job seekers kind of stand out when writing a resume nowadays?
Yeah, absolutely. What I like to mention is employers take 5 seconds to read your resume, right? Obviously, if it's going through a system, you want to make sure you have the right words on there. But then when it gets into a human's hand, the employer's hands, takes 5 seconds. So what I always suggest is, I actually like starting my way down and work my way up from a resume. Why
Oh,
I'm saying that is you're obviously going to know the ins and outs of, what year you worked at a certain job, your work experience. You're going to know your skills already and whatnot. But I find that if you already have a really good profile summary, something that's not too short and something that's not too long, and you have all your links on the header, so this can be a GitHub, your LinkedIn, your own portfolio, whatever it may be, um, you want to make you want to make the employer want to read more about you. So that's super important. Make sure you have a really strong professional summary. From there, once they start reading, okay, perfect. I'm gonna see now what skills and experience they've had. And that's what I always like to do if I like when I was job seeking, and sometimes I share this with my job seekers. Work your way down all the way up. You know, I know on top of your head you're going to tell me your job title, what year you started and ended, or months, and then you're going to tell me what you did. But can you tell me like how you can introduce yourself? And even for myself, I still have trouble like writing that down. So that's one tip I could say. Try to stand out once it gets into an employer's hand.
okay, that's really helpful. And you mentioned something in there that I have been thinking a lot about, and that's to basically on that document provide a way for employers to see examples of your work. So I know you mentioned having links to GitHub or a portfolio. Yeah. Is that like that to me has always stood out whenever applicants come to our company in stage, anyone who does that immediately stands out, but it still doesn't seem that common to me. So do you see people doing that more often? Um, because I think it's a really unique way to stand out.
Absolutely. And yes, I agree with you. It's not, I don't know why, but it's not that common with
Yeah.
employers all the time. But for you, for me, when I have someone say, I just made a portfolio. I'm like, perfect, let me check it out. In my head, I'm already seeing it. Wow, this person is determined. This person has such a creative mind. This person knows how to develop a website, especially if they're wanting to apply for a web developer role or tech adjacent to that. Um, and everything from their contacts are in there, their projects, a little bit about them. That's super interesting to me and for yourself as well. This is something that I always, try to mention is trying to make a portfolio about yourself a little bit, for employers to see and read about you or your connections on LinkedIn or on your professional Instagram or Twitter. People
Ah,
want to know more about you. Yeah.
that's super helpful. So for web developers, that are familiar with GitHub, that seems like a great place to host, those examples. But for other professions, Instagram is a really cool way to showcase some of the work you're capable of.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I know you hear a lot, and I still agree with it for sure. Try to keep your social media like away from your professional life, things like that. That's normal. But if you can make a professional Instagram a little bit about yourself, or if maybe you're doing like a side hustle, right? I feel like that's such a great way to show a little bit about your personality and also your work ethics.
That is a really practical idea. Yeah, it makes total sense to have kind of a separate professional profile. I actually heard someone mention the other day that they wanted to transfer into a field they had no experience with, and they basically couldn't get a job in that field to earn the experience. So they just made their own project, kind of like you're saying, went through all the steps, and then when they had the opportunity to interview, they talked about their you know um, passion project, even though they didn't
Yeah.
have work experience, but it ended up being what made the difference for them. So I think it's again just a really helpful piece of advice, man, to make it easy for people to find examples of your work. And then in the interview process itself, you said look for ways to kind of stand out when you're actually talking to the employer. Do you have any tips and tricks on how to do that when you're kind of face to face or in a video call with your employer? Anything that job seekers should keep in mind?
Yeah, it goes back to building rapport, just kind of like what you and I did in the beginning. I wanted to know a little bit about you, right?
Right.
Um, it's just, making a conversation seamless, and then from there, I find that you might not like figure it out till later on. You might have something in common with the person who's interviewing you.
Right.
Yeah, and then another tip that you can work off of that is try to bring up scenarios, projects, some skills without having the employer asking
Oh,
you about it.
that's
That
interesting.
stands out a lot. Yeah, and for me, I've sat in interviews for, some of my job seekers in the past, not for this job, but in the past, where I've heard employers say, "Oh, I was going to ask you about that, but you answered my question. That's great." That's happened to me. And I love hearing that, right? It's just bringing up things that obviously would relate to the questions, but without having them to ask more. I find that's super helpful to stand out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to make the most of the time you have there. Sort of plan your stories accordingly to highlight specific skills you want to shine some light on. That's a great tip. On the flip side of that, I'm curious, are there any things you would suggest job seekers avoid? Have you noticed, people doing anything in the interview that's a bit of a red flag or something we can just sort of remind people, hey, uh, be careful of doing anything, in particular?
Yeah, so one thing I always tell my job seekers to avoid is talking over the individual, right? Stop, just wait and then answer the question.
Mhm.
Another one is make sure you come in with a few questions yourself. That's super important, especially at the end. Um, and one tip I would always say is be there 10 minutes earlier, whether it's in person or behind a screen, just be prepared and don't fidget so much, just make sure you're talking confidently. And if you don't understand something, ask them to provide an example or have them clarify what they're trying to ask. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you mentioned, you want to go in to stand out. And I think those are things that should be avoided and should be corrected is, don't fidget so much. Wait till they're done talking and then answer. Come in with, like, don't leave an interview without any questions. Those things are super important. And sometimes, they don't click in your head right away because you're just trying to focus on, well, how am I going to answer this question?
Yeah.
Employers are humans too. That's obvious, right? We
No, it's
can,
a good reminder though.
yeah, and we can sense when, you're a little bit nervous or maybe you don't want to be there or whatever the case may be. Just come in, a little bit more relaxed, and be who you are. I do teach the interview workshop with Lighthouse Labs, and I love the last thing that we talk about in a pyramid is that be confident what you're ready to bring. Be confident with what skills and experience you already have. And that's one thing that I like to tell my job seekers is the underlying thing is just be confident.
That's I think something that comes from doing some of the things you're saying. It's by doing the preparation ahead of
Yeah,
time where that confidence comes from. So if you follow these steps, folks, for those of you catching this episode here, that's where I think that confidence comes from. And it definitely does show in the interview. So these are really practical things that you can do ahead of time. And I would encourage you to take Mayette's advice and also to reach out. I know we're coming up on the end of the time I asked you for today, Mayette. So maybe we can just remind people if they want to meet with you, use some Lighthouse services, uh, what's the process? Do they need to apply? Do they reach out on LinkedIn, the website? What's the easiest way to kind of, connect with the team over there and take advantage of some of these services?
for sure. So for the services, our services are for our grads, but if you're an individual just looking, just trying to find a new program or you're curious about it, connect through our website, Lighthouse Labs, and the admissions team should get back to you. There's certain steps, but you know what? If you're not for sure that you want to do the specific programs that we offer, like I mentioned, we do have info sessions, and that'll give you an idea of what is being taught, the curriculum, what's offered, and things like that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the insights today, man. I feel like we're just getting started here. So hopefully you don't mind coming back in the future for another one of these episodes. And hopefully we can connect with your husband as well at some point to hear the story of how, someone else has gone through multiple careers. But just hearing your story, I think is going to give people, a sense that, hey, this is possible. So I really appreciate you sharing the background here. And is there anything else that you would like to share with job seekers or career service staff members like yourself before we wrap this episode up?
Yeah, maybe we talked a lot about job seekers, but individuals in the space that we're in, career services, just remember, we're there to understand their needs for sure, and also for us to set boundaries with job seekers. And what I mean by that is, we're there to help them, but they also need to do their part. This job can be very rewarding, but it can also be very challenging. But always connect with your fellow career service advisors or anyone in the space, yourself as well.
Sure.
And just bounce off some advice from each other is such a great way of how we do our job.
That's a great reminder. It's so true. And it's similar to the interview itself. It's a two-sided experience. So, thank you again, Mayette, for joining us, for coming here, sharing your story, tips, and tricks. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners will as well. So, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'd love to come back.
That would be fantastic. I will be in touch about that for sure. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. We'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.